I'm a faith defender, God vindicator.
Hey again, folks, and welcome to Living in Denial. Two can play at that game. In my previous video, Straw Man versus Straw God, I said that we would be talking about the supernatural sometime. So today we consider the question, does belief in God enhance our view of reality and strengthen it? Or does belief in God somehow diminish our perception of truth and weaken our grip on reality? Well, the typical atheist would say that it is delusional to believe in God. Hence the title of Richard Dawkins' book, The God Delusion.
In the book, Dawkins states that evolution is a gradual progression from simple forms of life to complex ones. So if God is the ultimate in complexity, how could he just be that way from the beginning without any progression? The Christian would say that God is outside time, so it doesn't work the same. But it is a fair question to ask from what we see around us.
Now, one of my atheist friends, Kevin, recommended that I check out a chap called Aaron Ra as a good example of an atheist who debates with religious people. Now, Aaron Ra made a series of videos disproving that there had ever been a global flood, as many Christians believe that the story of Noah is about a global worldwide flood. But Aaron Ra just calmly and dispassionately gives the scientific evidence to prove that it never happened.
I have to say that I am totally with the atheists on this one, as science is obviously a valid way of explaining reality by making models which fit the evidence, so that if an experiment shows gravity pulls us down with a known force, then we can do the maths to make an aeroplane which will fly. So the Church of England and the Catholics both accept the findings of mainstream science. Certain evangelical branches perhaps would see a conflict where maybe there doesn't need to be one. In the scientific debate entitled Three Views on Creation and Evolution, the young Earth creationists were forced to admit that the current evidence was against them, since it is much easier to preach it than debate it. Remember, Jesus said the truth will set us free, so we cannot claim to be fully in the truth if we deny certain provable facts of science.
The question is, can science fully explain reality, or do we need something more? Here is Aaron Ra talking about the atheist view of reality.
How are you sure that your atheism properly represents reality?
If that means how sure am I that no gods exist, I'm definitely sure about that. We can say that no God exists in the same sense and for the same reason that we can say that there's no leprechauns, Sasquatch, or extraterrestrial reptiles manipulating the Illuminati in human guise. All of these things are unrealistic, unprecedented absurdities with no form of justification whatsoever. And when we get into either Eastern or Western theology, there is no potential for any of that to be true. Reading Genesis is really no different than reading the story of Pandora's box, Prometheus' crucifixion, or Persephone's abduction as an explanation for the seasons. They're all just stories imagined in the minds of men without any basis in historical fact.
Now, I would take issue with this because Jesus clearly stated that faith is testable, in that if we obey his words, then we will see evidence of God's power and his blessing.
Now, it's true that science and faith tend to work the opposite way around to each other, so that science will first look for the evidence and then reach conclusions about the truth afterwards. Whereas with faith, you have to recognize the truth in the Bible, and as we obey God's words, then we see the evidence for it afterwards. Not that there's no historical evidence for Christianity, there's archaeological evidence. There is the eyewitness accounts. But to prove God today, we need to use faith where science cannot investigate. I'll give you an example from my own life. Early into my marriage, when my daughter was very young, Rebecca, we had an instance where I was offered a job with AT&T Lucent Technologies in Malmesbury. Now, the job was paying more money, there was a better skill set. It was very tempting to go there. So we prayed for guidance. Now, just at that time, my mother was the local market stall and picked up a book for Rebecca. And it was this book, a book on dinosaurs. Now, we opened it up, and there you can see, just above the word Malmesbury, there is a Tyrannosaurus Rex with a no entry sign. So that suggested that God didn't want us to go to Malmesbury. Also, I noticed the dialing code for Malmesbury was 666.
Here is the dialing code for Malmesbury shown from Google. And in those days, I think it was just 0666, and the 1 was added later.
Now, 666 is the number of the beast, so that too may have been an indication that we should not go there. And as it turns out, if we had gone, there were problems with the company and it had to shut down at one point. Another bizarre thing which happened to me, which proved the supernatural, in my eyes at least, was when my wife was in the process of divorcing me. Now, she'd started going to a church in Dudley where people were saying that miracles had taken place. I sort of dismissed this out of hand because she was seeing another man at that church, and I thought, well, how can they tolerate that when she's still technically married to me, another Christian? But anyway, I went the one day to pick up my daughter from the church because we shared custody, so I had to pick her up at times and take her back to my place. So I was in the lobby, and this man who was dating my wife at the time walked through the lobby. Now, my instinct was to be angry and want to punch him. But what happened was I heard this sort of rushing water type sound, and I looked to the left of the room and I could make out the form of a sort of transparent being. Now, it was a bit like, I suppose, with that film, The Fantastic Four, when she goes invisible, Sue Storm goes invisible, and you can sort of make out the form, but it's the film tricks they're using. And this was what I was seeing. I was seeing this, and then I realised that this rushing sound of water was actually the beating of these wings behind this being. And it sort of started low, and they arched back, out the back. And then suddenly it swiftly sped to the right-hand far corner of the room, and then sped right up to me and looked in my eyes. And I could see this thing. It obviously knew I could see it, but everybody else was totally oblivious to it, couldn't see anything. And it looked at me, and I thought, it's sort of not impressed with me. It looked stern somehow, as almost if it was warning me not to do anything foolish. And so that shook me up a bit. And I was totally distracted from thinking of doing anything to this man.
Now, if we look in the Bible, in chapter 1 of Ezekiel, we can see that similar things are described about the creatures there. If we look at verse 14, it says the creatures sped back and forth like flashes of lightning, which is like the creature I saw speeding around the room. Also, it says in verse 24 that I heard the sound of their wings like the roar of rushing waters, which again was similar to my experience. So it confirmed to me the authority of the Bible for describing these things. Now, other Christians have seen these sort of things also. Many years after my experience, a chap called Marcus Stanley was shot 8 times in a gang initiation ceremony, and he saw a transparent angel stand in front of him while the shootings were taking place. He even believes that this angel may have deflected the bullets slightly so they missed his vital organs.
So do atheists like Aaron Ra believe that there's anything more to reality than this material universe that we see around us? Let's see what he says.
Yeah, and somebody told me that I had a presupposition that there was nothing but the material, and I said no. In fact, I actually believe that there is a great deal more to the universe than we have ever perceived. I will not speculate what it is. I have no idea. I suspect it's there, and I bet that when we find out what it is, it will be better, grander, more spectacular, and more interesting than anyone's notion of a God.
Yeah. The thing I would want to say to someone like Aaron Ra is this. It's nice to think that there are wonders in this universe which one day we may be able to explore through science. But if faith gives us the tools to explore a wider reality right here at this moment today, then shouldn't we take advantage of that and enjoy some of these wonders now while we're alive? You know, there's a man called Rupert Sheldrake who's written a book called The Science Delusion, I suppose as an answer to Richard Dawkins' God Delusion book. And in this book, he suggests that there are maybe ways we could explore apparent supernatural phenomenon using science. He did a study on dogs that seem to know when their owners are coming home, even when there's no evidence like sound or sight to actually see them coming.
Now, William Temple, a former Archbishop of Canterbury, once said that when I pray, coincidences happen. When I don't, they don't. So maybe there's an opportunity for us all to conduct our own scientific experiment here and see if prayer can prove that God is real to us.
And finally, the gospel song this week is So Satisfied by Don Francisco. There are more important things to do. Let's talk about following Jesus, same for you. Well, the Lord can change your mind and make you take it after it all behind. He can change your heart to want what's really real. There ain't nothing more important than to Father's will. And life ain't in a lady or a daughter or a girl. You won't get no satisfaction, and I know because I've tried. It's everything I'll ever need. I'm satisfied, so satisfied, so satisfied. I ain't never been so satisfied. Well, Jesus in my heart, I knew right from the start. Well, I ain't never been so satisfied. Say you just can't turn your life around. Some things you need, you just rather not put down. Well, that's the horse behind the cart. You know, believing's the most important part. He can change your heart to want what's really real. Well, things I thought I had to have are the things I left behind. Look for freedom in other places. Change are all you find. Won't get no satisfaction, I know because I've tried. Use everything I'll ever need. I'm satisfied, so satisfied, so satisfied. I ain't never been so satisfied. Way down deep inside my soul, fill me up, make me whole. I ain't never been so satisfied. Family may forsake me, friends may let me down. I may lose everything I own, but my God sticks around. No matter what comes down the road, He's never left my side. He's everything I'll ever need. I'm satisfied, so satisfied, so satisfied. I ain't never been so satisfied. Well, with Jesus in my heart, I knew right from the start. Well, I ain't never, oh never, I ain't never been so, never ever been so satisfied.